My apologies.
All right, yeah. Let's make sure I get back to the community. All right, are we ready?
We are ready.
Okay, I will call the, I keep wanting to call it Law and Safety, Public Safety, Courts and Public Safety Committee, to order, and, we have a roll call, please.
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Mr. Morse?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Beggs?
Here. With that, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from January 11th, unless there's any changes that need to be made.
I'll make that motion with one minor correction. Chris Conroy is C-H-R-I-S and then C-O-N-R-O-Y. That's how you spell our last name.
Any other changes?
Support.
We have a motion and support. All in favor to approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
No second. Mr. Erickson with a first and Hardy with a support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Any public comment? A little quiet on the western front, all right. This will be the northern front. East. Mr. Stockhill, got a Life EMS quarterly update for you.
Well, as we, I'll start off apologizing. I asked last week for the percentage of the time that we had all three trucks staff. I can assure you it's well over 95%, but I don't have that yet. The data guy was off those stuff. That information, I will send that to.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But, just to confirm that.
Thank you.
And I apologize for not having that,
Sure.
ready for you here. If you look at our numbers across the board, as far as our overall volume for the year, pretty darn close to where they were last year. Obviously, we'd like to see a little bit of growth, but, we can't go out and create our own way, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But, our staffing remains stable. Chris Schoner, one of the longtime supervisors here before Life EMS was here, did put in a transfer request and has transferred as of January 8th up to Mason County. He'll be missed here. He'll be welcomed up there. Just to try to let the dust settle, because honestly, Chris was probably the strongest supervisor in leadership that we had here, to give the other two a couple months to actually assume some of the responsibilities and understand everything that is being done before we post that position and bring a new supervisor in. The intent is to have 3 supervisors here as well. Looking at, and I was right on the verge of getting this for the third quarter report, because I just sat back and I looked at how did we come from a year and a half ago to just struggling across the board with staffing, and almost no county was fully staffed, and critical staffing levels at some level. What changed? And I reached out to our education director and I asked him, how many people are you putting through? I said, can you easily, without taking a lot of your time, give me the numbers? And in the bottom line is from 2020 to 2023, there's been more graduated since then. To graduate 563 EMT students, even if only a half or a third of those people wanted to stay in this field and take jobs, that's a huge impact on West Michigan. Not entirely on this area here, because most of those classes were in the Grand Rapids. There were some in Fremont. There was one class that had minimal students here in Hart. But once you fill the region up with people, we're not fighting back and forth. Quite so hard for people, and the staffing overall. We had 64 students go through the paramedic and complete the programs there. We'd like to see that higher. But, the benefit of getting a few more coming out of West Shore College is huge. I mean, the attrition rate in EMS will range from 25 to 30% annually. Ours is lower than that. But if you just, like for instance, when they had it before, if we could get 2 paramedics every other year out of West Shore College, that's a huge impact with the attrition that's there. It doesn't sound like much, but it's huge in having that program back. And it's going to help keep us fully staffed here and other northern counties as well. in the holidays, by popular request, we did do honey baked ham dinners for the Thanksgiving as well as Christmas. Were there going to the overall response report, was there anything that stuck out on that I can answer for you?
Newfield. Spurious had trouble. Are we still having trouble over there? Green? I see Greenfield's had some long times there.
It's the timing and the location. I mean, we'll see that go down when we finally get our station over there. What the impact will have on here, I don't know.
But how about sharing with Newaygo County? Are we better served?
I mean, like Newfield and the south of the river area is better served if we have the coverage there. They are, we run 4 ambulances over there, and we run over twice the call volume over there than what we do here. And there are about the same, probably percentage that actually go south directly versus going to the regional hospital. So that has a huge impact, and it really comes down to the timing of the call. Is there an ambulance sitting in White Cloud or Fremont has a better shot to Asperia than Shelby does. However, it's just making sure that there's one there at those bases.
Yeah, I can see in the exceptions, there's a Newfield, two units, 2 Oceana units on calls, 1 in a heart station. 100 units are those Newaygo?
Yes.
So three Newaygo units on call, and then 204 came from White Cloud. So, and they still got to Newfield in 19 minutes and 46 seconds. So, that's evidence that your dispatch is pulling the closest available,
It is. I mean, it's an automated system that selects that vehicle. We can put, for instance, there are penalties put on the vehicle, so our Newaygo units get hit quite a bit with Kent County calls as they're coming back out of the city. There are penalties put on them, like a 3 or 4 minute penalty, so they're not always assigned to the call. Sure. Other than true echo level where life is actually, where it's cardiac arrest or they're unresponsive, they're not sure if they're still alive. That's automatically gonna go no matter what county we're in, it's gonna go to the closest vehicle.
Jeff,
Yes, sir.
in this scenario with Newfield Township and south of the river and that, if Life was dispatching their own ambulances out of your dispatch center in Grand Rapids, would it be a quicker response time, or would it be any difference in the response time if you're pulling your own buses?
It would minimally, but if we do a CAD-to-CAD interface, which we're both moving in that direction, that will correct that. Yeah. And once that dumps into our CAD, the dispatcher doesn't, it's automatically going to assign a vehicle while the caller's probably still on the line and the call is being prioritized. It's going to assign it to the closest ambulance.
Thank you.
Well then, is it possible then to look and see if any of those busy buses were on inter-hospital transfers, and how are inter-hospital transfers going?
They're going fairly well. I mean, we're still protecting our 24-hour crews at night. Anything that's emergent, where it's deemed life-threatening, we take them, and that'll be the last ambulance coming out of the county too. We'll send them on that. Our last med control meeting, we had that if there was any issues, and that was no. So.
But are we moving closer to hospital transferring their own?
I don't think so. I don't think Trinity has the numbers to do that. They've, and I don't want to speak for them, and I don't want to, but just looking at the direction, they're going to more basic life support ambulances versus advanced life support ambulance. And if you look at most of the inter-hospital, inter-facility transfers, they're advanced life support. There's a reason they're going to a higher care. And so my understanding is they're going a little bit different direction than we are.
My only problem is subsidizing private industry, and we've seen this healthcare system grow exponentially for years now. It's where the citizens are providing transportation to and from those facilities, and it's private industry that we're working for.
I don't disagree as a whole with you, but if you look at the EMS business business right now with the hospitals, the centralization of some of the services and fewer that are out here. Fewer beds now in Muskegon than it was before when there were two hospitals there. Yet the finger always gets pointed at EMS because we can't move them. Because we're going farther distance with them, there's less that can be done locally. Unfortunately, we just need to work together and instead of point fingers at each other. But, am I answering your question?
I understand, you know, we've seen
But the
ProMed's out.
interfacility hospital, actually, that business helps fund this, because the subsidies don't entirely cover it, but.
And they are still Oceana County people. Most likely, they're in our service area, whether they're residents or visitors that require a transport from Shelby to
Absolutely
wherever.
correct, and by and large, they're the ones that have really truly validated by a physician, medical emergencies going on.
Is there, the, East, County, is there any movement, has anything started there?
I believe April was a great
Okay.
ground.
I saw dirt being moved, but I didn't think it was.
I was all excited when I saw guys out there doing it, and they were actually repairing some fiber optic across the site.
There's some construction going on near that corner, but I didn't think it was you guys, so I wasn't sure.
And I do know that, the hospital is looking for a plan B. The president, or the director was here at a planning commission meeting last week, and he expressed that at a public meeting that they're looking for a plan B for the nighttime. So, for whatever that's worth.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Jeff, appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, the undersheriff and the sheriff both have prior commitments and couldn't be here this morning, so they wanted to relay that message. Tracy, any comments on the, law enforcement agreement here for, Village of Hesperia? I think it's pretty much standard to what we agreed to, and this is just a re-up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just to follow up, from the last discussion about, making sure that these contracts can continue on, some wording to add on to those contracts. Ryan has been in touch with the attorney about those, and we'll be getting that information to the board for future.
Did they automatically renew?
No. No, you had asked for some wording for future contracts, some wording in them related to, automatic renewal or something. There was
Having it
something
done
that- there
before
was-
the end of the year.
Having it done.
I will not vote for an automatic
No,
renewal.
no, there was something discussed at the last meeting that you had asked Ryan to look into.
That they present it in November
Yeah, I think it
instead
was
of in
just
January.
essentially
Yeah.
that there's some planning done for the
Yeah.
next round.
Exactly.
We talked about putting it into their computer that
Right.
come and pops up that they've got.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think we need
Yeah.
anything in the contract for automatic renewal,
No.
just set a Google reminder that in
Right.
October to start talking
Yeah.
about it.
Okay.
There you
Sign
go.
before January
That,
1.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Is this one that I forget, I didn't look at the resolution or the motion, is this one gonna be retroactive to January 1 as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it covers January 1, 2024, December 31st, 2021.
I didn't look at that detail, so,
Tim,
yes.
Paul, you've had some discussion with the people over there. Are they,
Yes, yeah,
have they worked out little few bumps in the road that there were?
they're working out a few bumps, yeah, you know,
Okay.
we were late with the deal, and that was a concern to them.
What do you mean by that?
The village with this contract being retroactive.
Gotcha.
We're late, and, should have been done earlier. And,
Well, there's two parties to that problem.
well, I spoke with the village president, Michael Farber,
Uh-huh.
so I know what Mike said. And, but Hesperia's fortunate that with Division Avenue, they've got Newaygo County, and the school is on the other side of that line. So they've had great work with Newaygo in the school system, and also Newaygo's been in town a lot more, because they've got someone in the school. So it was just this side, and my understanding on the staffing, we have had some deputies that have been over there, filling up some overtime, and we're hoping to see more cars on this side of Division.
The Superior School have a resource officer,
Yeah,
so Newaygo County's what?
yeah, so that school's covered real well. We're very lucky to have Newaygo County as a neighbor.
And respectfully, it's hard for our sheriff's department to compete against that if they're looking at the departments, you know, this one and there, because they have a resource officer that's assigned to that part of the village of Hesperia all the time, you know, and you're talking about apples and oranges here.
And the big problem that, you know, they've had over there is in the village is enforcement of zoning and other things that the police chief used to do. And so, you know, they've been running without a police chief or any local enforcement of trespassing or just the things that you'd normally handle in the village. So, you know, I don't know if they'll ever have a chief of police again. I'm uncertain about that, but that's one real downfall for the village to not have a police chief.
Yeah.
Well, I totally agree with the administration at our sheriff's department that they do not want to get into zoning or any of those issues at all,
No,
you know.
no lost dogs and, you know, whatever it is that.
I guess, you know, I certainly see there's been some timing issues with these, but, I don't think it's fair to put all the blame on the sheriff's department when there's an entity seeking service. And I would say there's some 50-50 blame for a late contract. So I guess I just wanna say that publicly. Your comments make it sound like it's, you know, Hesperia thinks it's all the sheriff's department's fault. I don't know, it's possible, but if the village of Hesperia had this ready in November and the county sat on it, well, that's on them, but there are two parties that are seeking an agreement, and
I know there were several phone calls that were made requesting. Paul, is that correct?
Correct.
So.
I'm not trying to bring, you know, I'm glad we're getting it done today.
Yeah.
And when I say we're late to the table,
And I like the plan moving forward. Let's just start it in
yeah, it
November.
needs to be.
If I may, Paul, did Newaygo renew prior to the?
I think they were right on it. Yeah. Well, you know, with the presence of an officer in this, it's,
Big difference, yeah.
and sharing a village isn't easy with another county, when you look at it. But we have a tremendous amount of people that head to Fremont to do their shopping, and I mean, a large extent of our population heads to Fremont.
All right, any other comments, questions? All right, very good. With that, department heads. Go ahead, Cory.
Gary McKean, Oceana County Planning Commission, a new role for us. So February 1st, we had our first meeting that I was chair, and one of the questions I posed to our commission is, why are we here? So in a book that Tracy made me aware of, it's the 5th edition of basically the legislature, all the laws for counties, which I borrowed from Tracy and wound up purchasing a copy of. We basically went through a lengthy discussion about what our planning commission does and what we can do. We found a couple of things of interest. Number one is writing the 5-year plan, which is, we're in the process, which should be on your desk in early March. It's finally in approval, public approval right now. But secondly, our main goal is to start to educate and to work with the townships, the planning commissions and the zoning boards and so on, to make them aware of some of the laws and Robert's Rule of Order and Open Meetings Act and things of that nature. So on that point, we were able to work with Mary Riley, the MSU educator for government. You might know Mary. She's done a few programs for us here in the county over the last few years. Lives up in the Livingston area. And she agreed to do a program on May 16th, which will be held at the county annex building in in the classroom. And it's open to all board members of townships, zoning commission, anybody that has a need to feel a little bit better about what they're doing on the zoning board. And Mary will do an education program for about 2 hours. James Kelly was able to actually whittle down the cost of what Mary normally charges through the extension. So for 2 programs, we're gonna do one in May 16th and one sometime in probably late fall, maybe September, October. One is gonna deal with zoning, the other will deal with planning, and she calls it AKA 28 steps to keep out of court, which is an interesting thing to talk about. So with that, we're in the process of notifying the townships, supervisors, and making sure that all of the township folk that are on boards and so on know about this, so they can come. The $361 that they're charging us for 2 programs, so roughly $180 each, is basically out of our budget, out of the planning commission budget, which we have budgeted for. So those are a good thing. I think we're in the right step. So trying to build that bridge with the townships and how the county and the townships can work together. And it's an interesting read. It's a pretty big book that Tracy has in her office. So if you're really looking for something else to read, it's really pretty interesting. A lot of things I learned about parks. We'll talk about that at another time. But the Planning Commission has really they don't have to come to us with plans. We'd like that they would, because it's part of our plan. But there's nothing in the legislature that makes that necessary, unfortunately. So with that, that's what I had
And
today.
some homework you had for us, we all have to memorize that book as
Yeah.
planning commission members, so.
Yeah.
No, that's easy.
I have handouts.
Gary?
Yeah.
Have something for us, Mr. Maloney?
Sure. Okay, it's your turn now.
Yeah, well, just following up on what Gary's saying, they invited me to the planning commission meeting, and we talked a little about relationship building, because we really, from my office, strive per our strategic plan to build and maintain relationships with our townships and other political entities, and we're doing a really good job with that, and we're seeing a lot of cooperation. So we had a really good discussion about how planning can bridge that gap and help build that trust in local governments. So that was thank you for inviting me, and it was great to see everybody there. Just a little follow up on our hazard mitigation plan. Again, didn't see the latest email. Even though it's the same verbiage we've used for the last 3 plans, the new person at FEMA that's reading this one saw a little problem with the verbiage in there. It was didn't change the meaning of anything. They just didn't like a couple words. So Windsor Dix changed those words, resubmitted it. After review, it didn't change any of the document at all. But on that, we're waiting for that to come back to you guys for your approval. But we're getting closer with that. That's wonderful slow work. Also, you will be seeing coming up Code Red renewal for our massive public alerting system. It's a software, it's a renewal. The AAF, which is the allowability form that says we can do this through our grant, that's been approved by Region 6 and the fiduciary, and it's ready to come to you. It's been submitted to Tracy to be on your next board for approval of the grant. There's no out-of-pocket cost. I've requested a advance, which is a direct payment from the state that would make that payment, so we don't even have to pull out of our budget for that. Although, we are budgeted to cover that if necessary. Sure. So, but anyway, so that's moving forward. So that'll be coming up in future agendas here for you guys' approval. On Saturday the 5th, 2 Saturdays ago, we had a fire down in Greenwood Township at Cushman Creek Supply and Feed. Had a total loss of building. Superior Fire responded out of that. They called in because there was a lot of hazardous materials that had got on fire. 118,000 gallons of water to extinguish a fire with. I think they had 5 fire departments there from 2 counties. And they did a great job. They protected the exposures, but they had a lot of runoff. They did their best. They brought an excavator to dam and dike up the runoff, but some of it got into the creek. And so went through, checked all it out, looked at they had made the contact to Eagle for them, helped them through that. They've never gone through that process, so I walked them through that, and everything is good. The Eagle tested the water did contaminate down to about Roosevelt, so they did find contaminants on that fire, but most of it was a water-soluble fertilizer. So things should go really good in that creek, but there was 7,200 gallons in plastic 5-gallon buckets that were a total loss in there, plus all their normal kind of collision in there. But they had a loss, it was an Omni-Shown company, and so they were self-insured, and I'm sure that if I bet we went down there, they'd probably already built another building, but that was taken care of on there. And then obviously, the other night we had a fire in Shelby. We had one fatality, person stuck on the second floor of a very heavily involved fire. 13 people did escape and several pets. We did get Red Cross involved in those and try to take care of them, but there's 13 people. There's 3 apartments in a single family dwelling. That was converted into apartments, don't on that, but no smoke detectors. Chief White did a great job putting out a press release, reminding everybody to have smoke detectors on that, so to go be involved in that. So other than that, that's
I can't believe that that's still a thing, smoke detectors.
and they give them out for free. You call the fire departments, they'll install them. Yeah.
Tim,
Yes.
Tim. Troy, I went by Cushman Feed yesterday. The demo's all done, the ground's all leveled off, the trusses are there, the spec lamps are there, and everything's there to rebuild it.
Yeah, that's good.
They're sitting there and they were starting to auger posts to rebuild the building.
I had met with the owner about the mitigating project, because I let them know that, hey, Eagle's gonna be holding you, what your plans are, and they were fantastic to work with, and very appreciative, and it was a good relationship all the time, so took advantage of that. Any other questions? I'm gonna head to my monthly webinar with
Thank you. Any other department head reports? How about public comment? Hearing none, we will adjourn courts and public safety.
All right, I'd like to call to order the Finance and Administration Committee. May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Mr. Morse?
Here.
Mr. Beggs?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here. Moving on, approval of the meeting minutes from January 25th, 2024.
I'll make that motion. I'll support.
Supported by Morris.
Get together.
Motion by Morris, support by Beggs.
Same words, I think.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. Are there any changes to the agenda for Finance and Administration Committee? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Erickson, support by Beggs. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. Is there any public comment for Finance and Administration Committee at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on. Mr. Viard, Parks and Recreation appointment of Eric Bingston, 2024-20.
This was a request from the Parks and Recreation Commission to appoint Mr. Bennington to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Whose position, if I may, whose position is he replacing, or who is he?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we had one of our board members resign recently due to family issues, Adam Chandler.
Oh.
And Adam, we've been talking, you know, back and forth. He has 2 young daughters. Lack of child care after sort of 3 o'clock meeting was becoming very difficult for him. So reluctantly, we accepted his resignation. Eric is someone I've known for not terribly long time, but he is the campground manager director of the Lake Michigan campground just south of Pentwater. It used to be called the Old Methodist Church Camp. Has a great background in camps, worked for Michigan Adventure for a period of time as security, ran the security department there, ran Camp Pinewood for quite a while down at the YMCA camp in the Muskegon area, and he's really a great guy. He has a master's degree in Parks and Rec. So we have 4 very talented parks people on the board now, with Jeff Hiddema and Pete Lundborg and John Wilson. Now adding Eric is really a great opportunity. So I used to have a guy that worked for me for many years, and he's always said I had more degrees than a thermometer. So we don't want to probably get to that point on the Parks Board, but Eric will bring a good spark to our board. And he also recently started a 36-hole disc golf up on the east side of Scenic Drive across from the campground. And last fall, they hosted 2,500 people, I believe it was, Paul, right?
Yep.
2,500 people that played in a statewide tournament there that brought quite a number of people into Oceana County. I think he had close to 60 campers in his campground, but these are people that stayed in hotels and ate at restaurants in Poundwater and really got to know Poundwater a lot better. And they'd like to come back again next year, or this year rather. So he's gonna bring a lot of vitality to our board, I think, in a lot of different ways. Any other questions?
Great. Thank you, Gary. Oh, I'm sorry, Paul.
Yeah, and I've got to mention, Gary, thank you so much, and how we came across this individual. He's not related to any of our Bankstons. I was hoping maybe he had been, but Rick would remember, and growing up around here with Harvey Weaver, what a beautiful piece of real estate that camp is. And also we should mention that that's one of 3 camps that he oversees in the state of Michigan.
2.
There was one more.
He had 2, there's one he's not responsible
Well, not
for.
responsible, but this group has 3 camps in Michigan. And the development that's happened is amazing up there with cabins and bunkhouses, breakfasts. It's not necessarily a church camp like when we grew up, but it's open to the public now. And when Gary talked about the disc golf is huge, and up in Buttersville on the peninsula with the Consumers Project, where we have a disc golf course, and then Flip City's another disc golf course that we're using. Hart's got a disc golf course. When all those people came to town, they played at multiple courses in this event, and when Gary says 2,300 people, it's huge. It's a massive thing. So to have been brought into that through this camp is really, really nice.
Yeah, the camp is 312 acres, which I didn't realize it was that big.
Oh yeah.
And it's really quite a charm up in that neck of the woods. So yeah, but
And it's open to the public now, so it's completely different than when it wasn't.
Eric wanted to be here today to meet all of you actually, and he said he had to be at the service club to present a student of the year award to the service club, so he couldn't make it. But he'll be here probably next time.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks.
All right, any other discussion? Moving on, Administrator Biard, designation of financial institutions for deposits and investments, 2024-21.
So each year, your county treasurer provides you with a list, and that is included in your packet, and that's what this request is for.
Just one question.
Yes, Morris.
Any changes from last year? Are they all? I probably should have gone back and looked at last year's, but any changes?
Not that I could see, that,
Banks that we used last year, but we're not using this year, or added this year.
it might, well, my system is updating right now, so I can't go back and look at them, but
I thought the list was the same as last year, pretty close to this.
And I know we asked about, I think it was Chair Walker asked about the Lake Osceola, but there's actually a branch, I guess, in east side of,
Walkerville,
yeah.
downtown Walkerville, a big player out there.
Yep.
Yes,
I think it's just, you mentioned Lake Osceola, but it's good to see local banks as well as some corporate bank, larger banks. But our local banks are doing a lot of good work, in this area to work with municipalities and individuals alike. And,
well, I think Shelby stepped up the road commission.
Yep, Shelby State.
Bond, yeah.
I think they're moving forward with road commission bonding and,
Yeah.
with a great rate and, local service.
Yep.
So that's good.
Any other questions or comments? And moving on, Administrator Biard, Council on Aging change to date ballot proposal 2024-22.
so if you recall, they asked for the ballot to be placed on the May election, the board approved that. They came to me last week and asked if they could change that from the May election to August, simply because I believe they were getting some heat from some of the townships, and because it was gonna be the only thing on the May ballot, and they were gonna be, paying for that, so, that's what this request was about.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
There is no question that Oceana County Council on Aging provides an excellent service and does an excellent job in Oceana County. I'm going back to when the building was built over there, beautiful building, which is a separate millage than this, and I'm going back to what was discussed several times at previous board meetings that I sat on. If we look at this ballot language says an operating millage for Oceana County Council on the Aging to be placed on the ballot on August 6th. This is a 10-year millage that they're asking for. This language specifically says that it's for Oceana County Council on the Aging. I think we need to look into the future, and if we put this on the ballot the way it is, what happens to Ladder and Shelby if they need assistance? When we were at our land bank meeting, which was very productive last week, there was talk of putting a senior center in Rothbury with that development. Oceana County is only allowed to have 1 mil for senior resources. This language says that whole 1 mil goes to the Oceana County on the Aging, and nobody else will have the opportunity for any of that funds whatsoever. That concerns me, that we're doing this for 10 years, and I'm not speaking down about the Council on the Aging at all. But what happens if there's other places that need a little bit of assistance during this 10-year period?
Yes, Mr. Hardy, I've been, was in attendance in Walkerville at the report out that was done by the Community Foundation for Oceana County and Services for the eastern side of the county, and many topics were on the table out there for this, and increased services for our elderly was a large part of the discussion out there in the creation of a community room, creation of combination of township village offices, doctor appointments with our Council on Aging buses, perhaps a standard time that transportation to and from harder services could be done in a more economical way. And also in that room that evening, we had people from Love Inc. there that were looking at the possibilities of creating a satellite out in that territory of the Shelby Love Inc. We did speak about the Ladder, and the Ladder has performed a tremendous service in Shelby, and also the Ladder's looking at moving south. Now these are nonprofits also that are doing these things, and I must agree with Mr. Walker that we can't tie our hands on this, because there are other entities in Oceana County that might better serve these rural locations, and some of these people may never come to heart. And if you really want to start a discussion, go to Hesperia and have a talk about Council on Aging and the services that are available to the people in Newfield Township, Levitt Township, Colfax Township. I think that Mr. Walker's correct. It's not the time to tie our hands.
Let me ask you a quick question, Mr. Walker. The Ladder is a 501c3, correct?
Oceana County Council on the Aging is a 501c3.
But that's a county-sponsored
No.
facility?
No, they use Oceana County's name, but they are a 501c3. They're standalone. They have their own board of directors and everything, and all they do is they get funding, all of the funding from the millage that we're allowed to put on, we're allowed to collect for senior
No, I
resources.
agree, the Ladder's a great organization. I just didn't know if there were any grants or funds available to them through other channels other than a millage.
Oh, the Beckmans look for it all the time. They created this without a millage.
Yeah, I know.
And if you look at the ballot language itself, it says, for the purpose of funding operations and to providing services to senior citizens of the county through the Oceana County Council on Aging, a Michigan nonprofit corporation. There's a question mark. I think it needs to be a period.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Amy, when does this have to be passed by resolution for us to go on the ballot for August?
We've got some time. I think it's in May.
So if we've got a little bit of time, I would rather see this say Oceana County Council on the Aging or other, right on the tip of my tongue, Oceana County, or other entities that provide senior resources.
Do we know what the 1 mil actually is, or should we have somebody from the council come in? I know it says operational, but
This is operational.
just
Yeah,
operational.
the bond one is a separate millage. The bond one for the building is a separate millage.
Yeah, and this millage would raise approximately 1.4 million in the first calendar year of the levy.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
And that's 10 year.
That's a lot of money.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Oh, so maybe, I see what you guys are saying. I mean, that didn't even cross my mind. That's a concern of mine. What if for the meantime, we tell them that this has to be like a 3-year, until we get our balls our ball, whatever, you know what I'm trying to say, until we get things figured out. Because it almost seems like we need to have, that's a big thing to create, is some sort of organization. They almost need like a board that decides where the money gets dispersed to these different senior organizations at. That's where I'm thinking we would have to go. And then also, secondly, we already approved this, so they could go and say, hey, well, then we're gonna have it on the May ballot. If we're talking about reducing, from 10 years to whatever, or having other language on there.
I think this is the opportunity to open up a discussion, to express our concerns with the Council on the Aging.
Sure.
It's been done before, and they've come back and said, we need every penny we collect.
Well, and they get money from senior resources too. I'm on that board, and they get money from there as well. It's not like they only get money from N-County, for whatever it's worth, and I support it too.
I know they get it from a lot of different places. I do know, but when I came by the ladder in Shelby today, it went through my mind that this is a 10-year millage. And that's gonna tie up that fund, and nobody else is gonna be able to put another millage out there for that 10 years, because we're only allowed to collect 1 mil for seniors.
I guess I'd like to know too, is that, is this ongoing operational expenses?
What,
Is this part that's already being spent and needs to continue?
Mr. Hardy?
Yeah, but they run several buses and hire drivers, and I guess that's the
And
question.
they have an executive director, and they've got an executive director.
So we could,
Well, why wouldn't they? Somebody needs to.
Well, but my point is that we're paying for a public director with these dollars when we have these other entities that are providing services to our citizens that are not even given a nickel.
Or the opportunity to request.
well, no, I understand that, but like I said, it'd be nice to know, they run buses, they hire drivers, they're on the road all the time, what is that expense, gas, maintenance?
There's a lot.
And I just signed the grant from the Department of Transportation for, I'm not gonna throw a number on, a lot of money that they get from MDOT for that too.
I think it was 40, wasn't it?
So what you bring up, Paul, is kind of segues well into my concern. 10 years is a long time, and so I would be in favor of a shorter term, but for different reasons. You said they have an executive director, which is necessary in an organization that large to steer the ship and to oversee the program. My concern is, and this is a philosophical issue with how the money's spent. If we, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, I'm not saying the ladder doesn't do good work and Love Inc., they're all doing good work. The danger that we run into if we decide to open this up to a whole bunch of other organizations is duplication of services, which there are, and I hate this word, but I'll use it, underserved portions of our county because they're outlying areas. They're not in the population centers, that are kind of the center, you know. Hart and Shelby are the main population, and unfortunately, they're pretty well congregated into the center of the county. And outlying areas aren't able to easily utilize the services. But if we say, well, let's split this millage 4 different ways, now we have 4 different boards or 4 different executive directors, 4 different buildings that are being maintained, 4 different, so my thought would be, if Council on Aging is doing a good job facilitating, but maybe needs some expansion in these other areas, we need to empower them to partner with these other organizations, but not expand the program to have, it'll turn into government bloat, you know, so that's part of my concern, is that if we open this up and you know, and then we'll have to administrate it. There will have to be an organization that oversees. So now we've got more bureaucracy.
What, if I may, Muskegon County collects 1 mil for senior resources, and the administrator of Muskegon County brings a list to the County Board of Commissioners that they approve how that money is to be done. They just do it and they put that money out. It's $1,672,871 that 1 mil generates.
No, that's the clause, the MDOT grant that they got.
That's the MDOT grant. So there's an additional $1.5 million on MDOT grant for busing. So they do it. There are other models on how they do it. The Friendship Center and Pentwater, and having been on the Pentwater Police Department and been there, they had tried to get some of the revenue that's generated from the seniors millage, and Pentwater has never been able to get any of that, and that's all a volunteer basis at that. The latter is a volunteer basis. So there are several places that have asked, and I can tell you this, that it's going to have to be an affirmative action from this board, because when the Council on the Aging wanted to put the millage request for the construction of the building that they had on the ballot, I sat down with the chairman of the board of the Council on Aging and the vice chairman of the board of Council on Aging, and I said, I will support this millage if I can get assurance from you 2 gentlemen that you will look at providing services in the out-county areas. And their comment to me was, there's not enough resources to do that, we're not gonna give you any assurance. So I voted against it, because I represent the out-county areas. It's gonna take a very affirmative position, you know, to do it. You know, there's need all over.
And, you know, I have no greater heroes than Dick Walsworth and Bob Blackmer and having that building built, but if you've been on the streets in Hart, you'll hear that the building wasn't built in Hart. So now we have services that you have to get a bus to go to just east of town. And that's just in this little community, because we used to have it as close as the hospital medical care area where we used to have the Council on Aging.
But it's not school. How many of those people are gonna walk if it were?
But how many of those people are gonna walk from Hesperia, and how many of those people are gonna walk from Walkerville?
Well, one thing I wanna just point out real quick is this resolution 2401, are we operating millage renewal? This is renewal, so the renewal was for 0.9838 mils. And due to the Headley Act, they had to roll it back. So they're asking for the addition of the 0.0162. So this is a renewal of an already
existing
in existence millage.
But if we renew that millage, by statute, nobody else can request another one, because you're only allowed as a governmental entity, a county, to collect 1 mill.
Right, but I guess I'd like to hear from the Council on Aging as the current millage that they're getting, what are those funds going for? Is there anything left? Is it all on the expense side of it? That's all I'm saying.
You can
Mr.
show it when
Mr.
she
Hardy,
was here.
would we consider taking no action on this today till we get more information?
Yeah, I would consider that absolutely.
But I think there's wisdom in reducing the term,
At
because things change.
At least have a discussion.
You know, if, you know, we're not in the know right now, there's
Right.
other entities that are ready to expand, but maybe in 3 years there are, and so then that discussion can happen again. So that gives us flexibility,
Right.
to review it in 3 or 5 years, but probably 10 years is probably.
I don't know what the current millage was set at for what the span was. I don't know what that was, and I have to research that and find out. I don't know if it was a 10-year.
I can go back and find it.
I have the same concern that Mr. Beggs just expressed. 10 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And it's gonna lock anybody else out.
Yeah, I learned a few things this morning. I wasn't aware
Yeah.
of the 1 mil cap, and then that there were other entities.
No,
Vying for the
no.
dollar.
Yeah, I mean,
no.
that's-
Mr. Begg, that would be a question to ask Ed Vandergrees, because I'm going by memory where there was only allowed 1 mill.
yeah.
And the administrator could find out for sure
Yeah,
whether that's
let's-
true or not.
let's
Well, if we have
verify.
time, I would suggest, then let's go with no action on this right now until we get a little
I would appreciate that.
more information. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
Mr. Hardy,
Yes,
May 14 is the deadline
May 14th.
for it to be submitted to me.
Great. That
I
gives
think
us
we can
enough-
bring this back at the next meeting.
Next meeting, yeah.
And invite people from Council on Aging to
Yes,
be part of this conversation.
the director, I think.
Or if there's anybody in the Hesperia area or the Ladder or anybody else,
Yeah.
let's make sure that the information gets out there that we are going to be discussing this.
And
If
it was,
if we're gonna add any names to the list, it's gonna take more than 1 meeting, because I'm gonna wanna hear a lot of information about what they're doing, what their plans are. So, I'm not opposed to that, just,
Well, I'm sure that if the printed media carries something about this, I'm sure the other people, they'll be aware.
they're listening right now.
Pardon me?
The printed media's listening right now.
Mr. Hardy.
Yes.
So I think, I mean, yeah, we're gonna have the meeting, but I mean, just shortening the term and giving us more time. I mean, cause I don't think we're gonna be able to make a decision in 6 months or 4 months even about how to go about this, but just shortening, I mean, that to me, that's the simplest solution for now, shortening the millage term. But I was gonna ask, does Hesperia have, like an council on aging type program there right now at all?
No,
So where do they go?
they don't.
Maybe in Owego County.
Well, it's part of it, you know, but we broke up into 5 pods when we had this report out in Walkerville. And I sat in the services like this discussion is right now, and Council on Aging was a large part of it, the Ladder was a large part of it, Loving. You know, there's services that we're not getting in that eastern tier at all, that it's readily available here in Oceana, you know, in Shelby and Hart Townships. They got it. We've got, the Ladder is tremendous. It really is. And our Council on Aging's tremendous. The food program's great. The buses, Denny Gale drives bus, you know, as a volunteer. It's a very, very busy place. But to pass a countywide millage and try and get people that aren't benefiting from it to vote for it, all I'm hearing is my taxes are too much, my taxes are too much, my taxes, government blow, you know, more government, what do we have? We do need to listen more. I'm looking at the board report right now, and she was here, you know, and came and gave a presentation to us, but I think if everybody got a look at the board report, and you can see where the money got spent at our Council on Aging, you'd be much better off.
Well, I think that's why we need to listening and researching it.
got a question. So, So I keep hearing their services aren't available to the out-of-county areas. Are you saying the Council on Aging bus doesn't drive to Hesperia to pick somebody up to bring them back for lunch at the Council on Aging building?
No,
The same services that are available over here
Yeah.
are not available.
They got buses that run all over the county.
Yes,
There's
but they don't
transportation
have, but they
available.
don't have meals, they don't have adult activities, they don't have the training, the educational programs anyplace except here.
No, they hold them here, but it's still available to the population of,
Right, there's still a bus that'll come and get them and bring them to those
whether that's
activities.
Pennwater,
Well,
or whether that's
the-
New Era,
the-
Rockberry,
the-
I mean.
The cost, when you add the cost to the bus, to the cost to the meal, and put it all together, the economics is not there, is what I've been told from the people that they look at the whole thing.
Boy, I'd find it hard to believe that it's cheaper to build another building or procure another
I'm
building,
not-
staff it and do whatnot than have a hub where we bring the people to rather than
We've
have
already,
4 different hubs that,
but like
Still
Bob
need
said,
people
we've
to
already
bring
got
them to the
those
bus.
hubs available. We're not gonna close the ladder down and truck them to Hart. We're
but
gonna
if
keep
you
the
we're
ladder.
still gonna have 4 separate systems with,
You've already got them, and their nonprofit's not sharing in the dollar also. So
Yeah.
we've got other entities that are saying, why not me?
Yeah.
And that, we can't have that.
well, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how tax dollars go to a nonprofit. But that's another philosophical
That's
question.
another,
that-
that's
that-
another can of worms is what
Yeah.
that is.
Apparently it's legal,
The
but
last millage was 6 years.
6 years. Thank you.
I mean, charity work is charity work, and it's good work, but I also don't believe it's the government's work. But that
It is
may
when
not
you
be a
collect
pop-
a millage though.
Well,
When
yeah,
you collect and, you know, the bottom line is here, these services are for our elderly, our senior citizens. Those people pay taxes here most all their life. And what benefits are they getting? And when their taxes are increased because someone's passed another mill, they need a benefit. But if you're out in Colfax and you don't get the benefit, because
But
you're not gonna ride a
the
bus
same
to
bus
Hart.
that picks my grandmother up in Hart will come out and pick somebody up in Colfax.
Yeah, well, you can
So
skip,
I don't.
I think you need to look at, and I asked for this years ago, you need to look at how many runs are actually made for Old County.
But
yeah.
I guess I would ask for how many requests are made that are denied. So if somebody in Colfax doesn't call the Council on Aging to come pick them up to bring them to lunch, Council on Aging is not gonna drive out to Colfax.
For me, it comes right down to the same thing that it has as long as I've been on the board. If the millage passes, the people in Levitt Township, in Newfield Township, in Colfax Township, and Otto Township are gonna pay the same millage rate as the people in Hart.
Yep.
And they are not getting the services that they are in Hart. There's no question about that, Tim, none whatsoever. Look, ask for the addresses of people who use this on a regular basis over here. We had that at one time too. It was Hart, Pentwater, and Shelby.
But I still can't get past, it's a phone call to receive the services, they come get you, and you can partake in their services. So maybe it's an advertising issue, that the people of Newfield and Colfax don't realize that there's a bus that will come get them.
You're exactly right, and I've been on this board for 14 years, and for 14 years I've asked the Council on the Aging to do that,
Yeah.
and they haven't done it yet. That's the issue.
Mhm.
That's why I say we're gonna have to be affirmative if we wanna provide services for the whole county.
Right, so they need to spend more time and
I think
effort to.
I think it's something that we need to discuss, is where we're at.
One other thing, you know, I pulled it up, and this is 21. 1.7 million in total income in 21, and expenses of 1.4 million. But in that, there's $275,000 worth of administration.
That's what I'm saying, if we empower 4 entities, now we've
Well,
got.
I'm not going down, no, I'm not, all I'm saying is we're spending a ton right here, and maybe there is a way we can figure this out better. I'm not wanting to multiply or duplicate anything. I'm just wanting to give the services of the people that are paying for it.
Well, and I think
If-
that's one of
if-
the things we need to talk to them about, because I'd like to find out if that service is available for Walkerville,
Oh.
or New Era, or Shelby, or Bentwater, or
But like-
wherever,
What?
and it's a pick up the phone and call, then we are giving them services.
Why don't we have the county administrator call Mason County and ask if the free soil in those areas are all, supported with a millage up there?
I know Mason County just did, I don't remember if they consolidated or if they,
There's something,
they just did something the last couple
we
of
can
years.
check with the administrator's office and see how it works up there. And we could probably check to see how it works in Muskegon County too. So we have the information on how it actually works.
And maybe an additional thing for you to check on too is, so these are faith-based organizations, Council on Aging isn't, Ladder, Love Inc., those ones are. So I don't know if that makes a difference as to whether they can receive millage dollars or not, I'm thinking it does.
That might, yeah,
So just, if you could check into that, I'll add that to your list too.
or
Let's say
that's a good
would want
question.
to.
Right.
If I were a faith-based organization, I'm not interested in tax dollars.
Yeah.
Because tax dollars come with strings.
Right.
All right, everybody in agreement for no action on this?
Yeah.
All right. Moving on, Administrator Biard, discussion regarding combination of the county clerk and register of deeds.
Before I move on to that, I just wanted to point out that the county treasurer said that there were no changes to that list that she provided.
Oh, thank you.
Depositories.
Yeah.
To the depository investment, yep.
So, I had reached out to the board, some time ago with an email about, the combining of clerk register. I understand that this, has not gone anywhere in the past. I just brought it up to have a discussion to see what the board thought, and had a couple of commissioners that thought it worthy of, being placed on the agenda just for discussion.
So tell us about the benefits and any potential drawbacks that you see.
Benefit, savings of roughly 100 to 160,000, depending on, how much staff. The clerk's office, has 2.5 staff right now, and, that staff has not changed since, the removal of payroll or accounts payable. Combining of a position, I had some people question me about that $100,000 savings and how can I look at that as a savings with a combination of 2 elected officials, because it would cost more money, and that is not the case. When you have a clerk register, that position doesn't make more because they have 2 people under them, or 2 positions under them. They still make the same as your elected officials. I don't know, I can't speak to the reduction of work in the Register of Deeds at all, now that they've gone with some of their digitizing and so that stuff is digital. So I don't know if that has saved on the workload at all.
If I may, Amy, with the election law changes, how much additional work does that put on your office?
A tremendous amount.
So technically, the $100,000 or $150,000 savings would be offset by, you're still gonna have to add personnel to the combined office, whether you don't have an elected official. I'm assuming that the 2.5 people that are actually in the clerk's office right now, you're still gonna end up with
Deputies.
Well, first of all, you're not, elections aren't every year.
correct.
They are hiring several people right now, 40-some people for your election work for the 9 days early voting.
Inspectors. Approximately 30.
that part is changing. However, you know, there's extra people working the elections yearly anyway, so,
Mr. Harding,
Yes.
during an election time, if we have a combined register of deeds and clerk's office, and it comes to election time, when we need more people who are trained, who are employees to do the elections, to take charge of the different elections, we still can't shut down the register of deeds office. The register of deeds office still has to be open. It's not as if we can move everybody one way, or if they get or if the deeds start coming in, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them a day from a development like Shelby Acres. We can't pull everybody and shut down the clerk's office and move them into the register of deeds office to get all of those things in. There's things that we are still mandated to do, and there is an expectation from the general public that they be done in a reasonable length of time. So we have to, probably elected positions in government are probably the only place where you can be mandated to do twice as much work, and if not do twice as much work, have twice as much responsibility, because there's a lot of responsibility in the clerk's office, and there's a lot of responsibility in the register of deeds office to make sure it's done right, and make sure there's no errors. And probably elected government's the only place you can be given that responsibility and not be compensated for it. And I have a problem with that.
Yes, Paul.
When I was a boy, I ran for Register of Deeds. And I didn't win, but I knew the responsibilities of the job through my banking career. Later, I ran for the clerk's job. And it's probably a good thing I didn't get it, because I understood the responsibilities of that clerk's office run by Phyllis Schley at that time. And I think with Phyllis Schley, we received an excellent, excellent county clerk. And the office job responsibilities have not changed for that office, other than the court clerk now has been removed. And we went through that discussion with Judge Lambrix a couple weeks ago. But for anyone to have started this conversation on a rumor and then look at eliminating another elected official from this building to have this conversation that's been had in this room 3-4 times in the last 20 years, I believe. And if anyone's not familiar, that's our Register of Deeds in the back row. And so have they conferred and said this is a good idea? Have you gone to see Mr. Hodges and had a conversation with him to see if it's been a good idea? If you have not, we shouldn't even be discussing this right now, because it started on a rumor. I think that our county is running fine the way it is. I don't think we need to mess with our Register of Deeds, and I don't think we need to touch our clerk's office, other than to give her more help for the upcoming elections, of which 40 more people under her wing for 9 days of early voting. This is getting ridiculous.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Ward.
When we talk about financial and saving money, if we want to look at how to save money at Oceana County, when it comes budget time, pass a budget that gives each department the money that they need to run their department, and be very, very conservative when departments come to us for things outside of what they have asked for in their budget. There's one department that's already got $90,000 during the first year of our operating budget. We can't keep doing things like that. And I understand the logic behind all of it, don't get me wrong, but we need to, if we watch our nickels and dimes, the dollars will take care of themselves. And we need to watch more of sound budgeting than we do elected people. There is a reason that it's set down for county government in the Constitution to have these separate offices. And I realize with automation, it's a lot easier to put them together with the automation. But I'm still back to the standpoint that I wasn't crazy about this the last time. The last two times I was on the board, it came up, and I'm still not crazy about it.
I'm not crazy about it either. I don't think, you know, you're looking at $150,000 in savings. I think it's probably skewed a little bit on personnel and moving personnel or acquiring personnel. And to have the two elected entities separate, they both have different things to do. They're trained in different ways, so I don't see this as, I wouldn't support it.
I don't want either one of these jobs.
Yeah.
And I couldn't handle either one of them,
Mr. Hardy.
and I can't support this either.
So I supported bringing it to this meeting. I told Tracy, I wanna talk about it. I think it's good for us to talk about it. Doesn't mean I'm supporting the idea of saying we should do it. First of all, I just wanna be very clear with that. And before I make a decision, I would talk with Amy and I would talk with Rick for whatever that's worth. This is just a starting point for me, maybe an ending point, but I wanna be very clear with that. I would do my homework before I actually supported to actually make a change. The reason it's on the table for me is other counties have done this and successfully. So and it seems like, and it may not even be the right time, but it may be the right time if there happens to be changes in the Register of Deed office and clerk's office as far as who's running those departments. I don't know that for sure to be a fact, but if there is, hey, let's at least, you know, put it on the table. That's where I was coming from, for whatever it's worth. I'm all about efficiency. You know, the previous conversation about council and aging, you made some good points, Tim, about efficiencies and about duplication of efforts. And so if there's some things that we can do, and the reduced costs, I wanna look at it. But I'm not saying I support this idea and I would support it today as far as, you know, implementing it, for whatever that's worth.
Yes.
I just wanna reiterate, the problem I got is it got on this table without any homework. You talk to the two elected officials before you bring it to the board. It didn't happen.
So I wanna talk with my colleagues first and have that opportunity.
He's
And
an elected official.
we can't because of Open Meetings Act. So this is the start. If we're gonna talk all at one time, I'm talking to you and I'm talking to you and then I'm talking to you. You know, I wanna be able to talk, all of us at one time, and I understand that puts us in hot water sometimes. That does because then people like, okay, they're gonna make a change. No, I just wanna be able to have a conversation with my 4 colleagues that would have to make that decision with me. And then, yeah, absolutely, Amy and Rick would be part of that conversation.
Well, yes, I'm sorry.
I'll echo what Phil said. So I agreed that this is a good item to have on the agenda. I did talk to Amy. I was in Amy's office about another issue and she asked. I have not talked to Rick. This is on the table because our county administrator, and I don't know the impetus of this, brought it up as a discussion item. I don't like email discussions, 1, because they're not productive. 2, because
we can't.
We can't. There are ideas that we discuss around this table that I may have, and I asked for this to be on the agenda, not be kind of similar to Phil. I don't think I support it, but I also don't know enough about it. The only way I know enough about it is to have the discussion. So, Paul, I understand your frustration. I think it's out of line. If we were gonna move forward with this, I would go and talk to Rick. Or have a serious discussion. Right now, we're spitballing. We're just talking about what are the pros and the cons. Is it a workable solution? Now, here's my thoughts on, so that's my thoughts on why we're discussing it. Now I'm gonna talk about what my thoughts are. The savings, on paper, I don't think would be realized. We have both positions, the clerk and the register of deeds, work. They do work. They're not just overseeing, they're not delegating everything. They have responsibilities that are delegated, but I suspect that there would have to be at least a half or another full-time position hired if we combine. So the net savings really aren't there. The people of this county, like Mr. Walker mentioned, these are positions that are constitutionally, provided for, and so, Amy brought this up in our conversation, that the taxpayers lose a representative in county government by consolidating. So I think that's a valid point. Elections are a hot topic right now. And so it's an evolving environment. As we've already seen, now we've got, 9 days of prior voting. That's, we've got ballot drop boxes and all sorts of what I would call ridiculous things coming forward, but that's a political statement that I'm willing to make. But it adds requirement of expertise. So both of these positions have some pretty niche expertise. And so I know, looking at it, if I were interested in that position, well, now I've got to be an expert in 2 areas of very intricate, very legal spaces of work that really isn't, other than coming to the same building, there isn't a whole lot of overlap. I don't know a lot about either position, but I don't think there's any overlap in the job description. So now we're asking an individual to run for a position that may or may not pay more than a private executive position, and do twice the work for the same pay, kind of like what you said. So overall, I don't think it's a workable solution. I'm not sure the savings would be realized. I don't think we'd know that until we were a year in and really studied. I just find it hard to believe there'd be a realization of savings. So I'm in support of the discussion. I wasn't necessarily in support of the idea, but I knew that conversations are on the table. Sometimes some of you think differently than me, which is probably a good thing, and could influence the discussion. So that's why we're talking about it.
Lastly, I know of another community that's struggling with the similar issue on having appointed people. They can do it for clerk and treasurer instead of having elected. And I know they're struggling with that right now. And their thing that keeps coming back is, in small communities, if you have appointed people, they don't have to be residents. Small communities, they have to be. What would happen if we combined both of these positions and somebody decided to run for that position that totally couldn't handle one of them, let alone 2 of them? That could possibly happen with the right political campaign. You get somebody in one of those offices that don't understand anything about the workings of government, from the Open Meetings Act and the Right to Know Act and everything else. It could be a disaster for the whole courthouse.
Yeah, all it takes is a filing fee and a petition. There is no, when I was elected, there was no competency test, which
we never had to submit a resume, did we? Okay. Mental or
Yes.
A little history on that too. When Clem McLeod ran that office that Rick was in, everything was done longhand, and everything was grantor-grantee index, and it was something that Henrietta Snyder had done for a long time for Bud Stover. And when I looked at taking that job, I'd have gotten Henrietta with it. So that was a huge, huge plus. And then the other thing, when I ran for county clerk, I ran after Aunt Betty Field, and I would have gotten Phyllis Schley as a deputy. So being an elected official is not all bad if you've got a deputy in the House. And Rick hadn't the experience, but now what Rick has got in that office is a fully computerized system. It's different. And to ask anybody to walk in, I remember when you installed that system, when we went from grantor-grantee, and yeah, you just don't mess with title work. When I was in title work, everything was done by abstracts, and you had to have an attorney's opinion on an abstract. And so there had to be a lot of work spent at Hugh Lurie's office, Walt Urich's office, Tony Montan's office, in order to get a title policy. And they would go to the register of deeds to do that work. But now with title insurance, the way it's going, we don't have all of that, but they depend immensely upon the online service that Rick's got for our register of deeds. You can go in and do a great search, and you go all the way through either one of our names and see what our properties are, what our mortgages are. So this electrification of that office has been a tremendous advantage. But when you were talking about saving bucks, it's boiling down to less than $100,000 in my mind right now, if that, to eliminate one of our elected officials. This discussion when Paul Inglis was here was done, and when Sue Johnson was here, it was done, and it's time to stop it. It's not worth talking about anymore.
One question I have is, so of the counties that have done this, why did they do it? And probably the same reason we're talking about efficiencies and saving some money. How many of them have buyer's remorse? I'd like to know that answer. Again, I'm not saying necessarily, and it's hard to be so hard to
Contact them directly.
figure that out,
and
yeah.
just ask
And
them.
it'd depend on the person probably.
There's
you know?
35 of them.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that we should go this direction. I just wonder how many of them do have, asking out loud.
And I'll tell you the same thing I said to you before. I don't want to be like another county. I don't care if other
Sure,
counties
absolutely.
have done this before. I've got enough experience in this building to know that neither one of these two people want this.
I'm not saying we do it just because of the counties are doing it. I'm just saying it works at other counties, so maybe it would work here. That's all. That's all.
Mr. Hardy,
Yes,
I think we have a consensus here, and I think we have an agreement from the majority it's not a voted on agreement, it's just a consensus from the majority of the people. The majority of people aren't in favor of going forward with this. And I think we can put this to rest right now, because no good is gonna come bickering back and forth.
right.
And
No,
I
I
think-
think if you wanna do a little more research on it.
I'm not sure it's that important enough to even do that. I just wonder that. That's
Well, in the buyer's remorse, you'd have to pull the taxpayers.
Right, that's what I mean.
Right.
That's what I mean. It's hard.
Can I just say this one thing? Paul, I understand you know a lot of the history. I just feel, I just wanna say as a board, I'm not sure there are any topics or questions that should never be discussed. I think we should be open to ideas and willing to discuss them. And that's what we do around this table. We discuss issues. So if our administrator or one of us as an individual or one of our elected officials has an idea, I think we owe it to the people of this county to have a discussion.
Yeah.
Even if we think it'll never go anywhere, let's have the discussion and not via email. We're right here, we're in the public, everybody can hear the discussion. And we're being open and honest about the context of what's being discussed in the direction that we're gonna head with it.
And Tim, if we all agree on everything, something's wrong with this
Yep.
board.
Yeah, but I gotta go back again to say, nobody called Mr. Hodges.
That's not, Mr. Hodges and I had a discussion.
One guy. We owe it, he's an elected official. Nobody should be up here talking about his job until they've spoken with him about
What
his
have we
job.
discussed today that put anybody's job in jeopardy?
I'm not talking jeopardy, I'm talking about coming to the table with knowledge.
This is the initial inquiry. If there's reason to go farther, then there'd be more discussion with
Well,
Mr.
and I think
Hodges.
Mr. Walker's right, then if the majority of us, don't see this as an option, so I would like to move on, if that's all right.
Yes.
Please do.
All right, Administrative Biard, Administrative Review of Selected Claims for Payment and Administrative Report.
So the claims for payment are included in your packet. I did wanna point out one thing that's on that list. And it probably wouldn't have stood out, but there was an invoice there for $3,500 for the county airport. And that was from an invoice from 2020. They realized they hadn't gotten paid, and so we reached out to MDOT,